It was Good Friday, as we got ready for Easter with gifts and perhaps an egg hunt inside, as that's what we did in Kodiak. The weather was cool, sometimes wet with snow, but the day was getting brighter as the winter darkness leaves the island. Hello, I am Marian Johnson, and I want to talk about the March 27, 1964 Alaska earthquake. I had taken my husband, Dr. Bob Johnson, and eldest son to the airport for an Anchorage trip. Bob had a medical meeting, and eldest son, 10-year-old Craig, was going along to see the big city. David 8, Jim 3, Gary 6 weeks, and I were returning home in our Volkswagen Bug when the car began to shake. I stopped, thinking flat tire, got out and realized it was an earthquake, with rocks falling and bushes shaking on the base town road. I jumped back in, somewhat frightened, as Bob and his folks were gone, leaving me with the homes and 2 large German Shepherd dogs. Our property is called Spruce Haven and is located between the ocean and Mission Lake. The approach road led over a small bridge where the lake water flowed out. I drove over, came to our home, which was unfinished, but had furnace, running water, and comfort. The home sits on the ocean cliff, and the large aquarium had lost water, hallway drawers thrown open, and toilet water emptied. An old-fashioned top-heavy lamp had fallen, leaving broken glass all over the plywood floor. I cleaned it up, as it is something I have to do, and turned on the Navy radio station. They said, go to high ground. I had a phone call, watched a float airplane have trouble coming out of the channel, and realized it was time to move. There was no way out. The first wave, full of power, happened at low tide, for which I am eternally grateful, as it was powerful, taking out the bridge and approach road to our property. The land descended and the seawater entered the lake. The back way was heavily fortified with a back barbed wire fence that did not appeal to me, with our 3 boys, 2 big dogs, and the cliff to the beach. We sat on the couch in the living room overlooking the ocean, nursed the baby boy, put life jackets on 8 and 3-year-old. Was I thinking? Did I know about tsunamis and their energy and destruction? The earthquake had broken up the 2-foot ice in Mission Lake into parts, and the salt water entering the lake bed picked them up like candy and threw them about into the creek bed and over into the ocean. It made noise, like many jets coming over, and I became more afraid. David prayed, Jim was silent, and the baby slept. I put a ladder on the front porch, thinking we could get up on the roof. Fortunately for us, the water did not come over the cliff, but with its energy, removed all the vegetation along the cliff. The telephone pole fell down on Shahofka Cove, removing electricity from our property. Mission Lake became a saltwater lagoon, removing our water supply. Pacific Northern Airlines flew a Constellation 4-engine plane into Kodiak, and she was a dream to ride. She was smooth, comfortable, and sometimes each child could have a 3-seat booth for sleep on the long way home. She had landed, took passengers, which included my husband and son, flew to Anchorage. While in the air, it was announced about the gigantic earthquake, and the Anchorage airport tower fell down. So the planes were diverted, with ours coming back in the moonlight. Bob came dashing in the back door, had hitched a ride with friends, built a fire, said you are fine, and left for the hospital, leaving Craig with us. The next wave came in with more water. The tide was rising, and the Sitka spruce cones floated in the water as the ground was frozen, but the cones are light. I thought with the moonlight, this is scary. 2 men hiked out to save us, Jim Branson and Richard Hensel, and I gave them dry socks as they were wet. I would not leave the house without letting Bob know. I was young, obedient, and at this point not thinking clearly, but stayed. Bob came home, parked his Volkswagen Bug, other end of the property, and said, come see, how safe you are. I went and watched the ice floes floating back and forth into the ocean from the lake and thought, we must be crazy. Get us out of here. And it was not that polite. So the family of six
Bug
with
is
two
not a
German
large car, and it looked very
shepherds
small
hiked
that
over to
night.
find the car
It
had
was
turned
almost
with a wave
midnight, and we were
and salt
tired,
water
so
inside
went home to
and
listen
listened
to
to
battery
battery radio and drink salmonberry wine. We lived through the night. Bob went to the hospital at 4 a.m. that had moved from the Channel location to the ACS Hill. I served thawed spinach and vanilla ice cream for breakfast, and later I walked out to Louis Horn's home around the lake with our children. He built our handsome home. As a family man, sat me down and served me a dose of scotch, as he had just put a door on the Brecken's liquor store damaged in the uproar. Horns had suffered damage to their basement, but upstairs were fine. Our fish freezer contents were sent to high ground and friends. We returned home, settled into a routine cooking over the Coleman stove, saving the roof water in drums, but it always smelled like tar, but wet, and I could do lots with just a little water. Our bomb shelter, built during the 1962 Cuban Missile uproar, came in handy with supplies like candles, charcoal, water, paper products, and canned goods. But remember, no fancy diapers, cell phones, bottled water, and all the conveniences we take for granted now. A new line of barnacles appeared out the window, as we had dropped some in the quake, and it looked like someone had painted each island with a band of white. The boys ran around the woods finding treasures, leaving glass balls in place for pickup, only to find they were gone the next day. Son David brought me steel pitchers, which I use to this day, that fetched up in the woods. In the coming days, we would ask about friends and make contact. Electricity would arrive in about a week, with a new telephone pole, but running water would not until the road was built after many months had passed. The Kodiak City manager, Mr. Ralph Jones, had applied for urban renewal, assistance from the United States government before the earthquake, and after it came into effect, assisting the massive cleanup of downtown. Filling of the area with 6 feet of rock so businesses could rebuild. Kodiak's boat harbor repaired as jetties need to be raised, and later a water line out Spruce Cape, as local wells had been compromised with bedrock shaking. The new water line would allow this area to be built up with houses and provide us with water. I have to this day a fondness for running water. It was a 9.2 quake on March 27, 1964 at low tide and dinner time in Kodiak, and many knew how to survive the disaster.